Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Norma Nieto, and I'll be facilitating our webinar, today focused on leveraging analytics and data to strengthen your foundation. Whether you're an actual foundation, a nonprofit, or a for-profit company, our webinar today is going to be applicable for anyone interested in a cost-effective, scalable, centralized data warehouse and knowledge management platform. Before we dive into the content, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, this session is going to be recorded, and the download link to the recording will be shared with you afterwards. Second, we will have live Q&A at the end with our presenters. To ask a question, please use the question feature on your GoToWebinar control panel. It's usually found at the right side of your screen in a little panel. For any questions we can't get to in our live session, we'll be sure to follow up with you individually afterwards. So now I'd like to start by introducing our presenters for the day. First up is John Talieri. John has a very diverse and interesting background. His career began as a technologist for the Department of Defense, but he quickly transitioned to CIO roles for global technology firms. He spent the last 11 years in the international nonprofit and foundation space. He was head of global information technology for PACT, an international development organization, and he was the senior director of global technology of Women for Women International. He was also a member of NetHope as the IT leader of both PACT and Women for Women, and is the current member of FISM and TAG, both foundation affinity groups. John is currently the Director of Business Technology for the Annie Casey Foundation, and he will be speaking about the common challenges that all organizations face, both from his unique perspective as a former global CIO and in his collaboration with a broad network of nonprofits and foundations. Next up, we have Yogesh Manchanda. Yogesh is our Director of Enterprise Architecture and Cloud Technologies here at CEI. Yogesh is passionate about applying technology solutions to business problems, relationship building, and driving customer and business value. Yogesh's areas of expertise include IT strategy, enterprise architecture, portals, data analytics, knowledge management, integration, and search solutions primarily based on Microsoft technology. Since he moved to the DC metro area 20 years ago, he's been assisting both charitable and membership-based nonprofit organizations as well as local government customers. And last but certainly not least, we have Matt Whitfield. As the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director of Sales, Matt has over 25 years of experience in solutions delivery, consulting, business development, and helping both for-profit and nonprofit organizations leverage technology to drive business value, increase engagement, and implement mission-critical initiatives. Our webinar today is going to cover these topics. We'll talk about the common data challenges that any organization experiences and what the impacts of those are. We'll share with you our vision for a solution, talk about the key elements of that solution, and share with you some of the value realized. We'll share a little bit about CEI and how we can help you today, followed by the Q&A portion. So I'll turn it over at this time to John to get us started.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. As we look at common data challenges, it's not just a nonprofit issue. The different types of organizations I've been with have all had these similar issues. As I entered a new public or private company, we had different data sources, and it was a chore to figure out the different sources of truth, different data types, and the processes around were kind of cobbled together along the way, and it really depended on investment levels of the organization, priorities, so much silo-driven efforts, and it took heroics to bring all the different pieces of data together. So whether you were going to share that within your organization or outside your organization. And this is one of the things as we go through this journey today that started us off, is trying to figure out those data sources, the data types, and doing an analysis in those processes, and how we can improve that, partnering across the organization, partnering with leadership and others, learning from others outside of organization to bring that to a better place so that we could get to where we want it to be. Now, if you're a nonprofit, typically you haven't received earmark funding from a donor, and it's a struggle to get funding to do these things. But it's important to leverage those peer groups like we mentioned earlier in the intros, the net hopes, the tags, the FISMs. Learn from your partners how you can better deal with data challenges, data type challenges, and processing challenges. I think there's a lot of good people and a lot of good work going on, and that's really the basis of getting this fixed first, and then we can build on it later on. And then we can start to talk about the lack of integrated data and analytics. I think as you try to bring those data elements together, it's hard to get that collaboration and transparency across your organization. You start to see the inefficiencies as maybe you're working with finance and you have a grants team in the nonprofit space, and how you bring the elements together to have a consolidated view with the data and analytics, because everybody's running their own systems and there's no commonality to bring those data sets together, or where they overlap. You may be focused on customer engagement, donor engagement. You're not a foundation, you're a traditional nonprofit. How are you pulling common data out from your projects, whether it's M&E data or other types, to show what your impact is? And if you're making a difference, whether it's Zimbabwe or South Sudan, it's another, once again, heroics to sort of pull those elements across the organization. And how do you present them in a meaningful manner? Because you want that next set of donor funding, or you want others to take interest in you to attract new donors, potentially, to get additional funds to improve your projects or to expand your projects. It's also hard to make decisions without complete knowledge. So if you're having to piece together data that's in a CRM system and it's not connected to your finance system, that's not connected to a grant system or a budget system, depending public, private, once again, or nonprofit, if that's all manual processing, old systems, new systems, it's tough to really bring those pieces together for management, for the board, for donors, or anybody that you're partnering with. It's difficult, and as we drive towards the solution that we pulled together, all of this was part of the project to try to address these points as we came up with our overall solution. And so what we tried to do is come up with a shared vision for the data and analytics. Partnered across the organization, a lot of communication, a lot of understanding with our peers. What are they doing? What's worked? What's failed? And we wanted a cloud-based solution that would allow for data collection, secure storage, secure access. And we wanted it so it was a collaborative platform so that staff and partners could access it depending on their access rights. And we were able, with everybody working together, to get to a point where we could bring these pieces together. And you don't have to take every system and bring it online at once. We were able to gradually go and connect different systems, different solutions together, so that we were able to layer upon the data and the value of the system over time. So it wasn't really a big bang, it was incremental and incremental improvements. And we could show people, staff, partners, what we had, see what they liked, what they didn't like. We could make those changes quickly in an agile-driven improvement process. And then we can continuously add value as we went along with the overall process. And so we were moving away from the legacy processes, from a lot of manual processing. That meant change management and getting people through that process, which is also a whole nother project really onto itself. But we were successfully able to go through that. And so I think we can talk about the solution architecture now.
Yeah, so I'm going to start by saying thank you, John, for walking us through, the business challenges that most of the organizations have faced, and more importantly, for your partnership through that shared vision slide that you just shared with all of us and with other nonprofits. And again, as a nonprofit, organization, whether you're membership based or whether you are, a charitable 501c3 nonprofit, it's important for us to make the most of limited resources, especially in the current situation. We must make good use of technology innovation that is available to us, and for that, the knowledge management platform that we set out to build with our shared vision, we used a solution architecture that was both flexible and extensible. The identity and access management layer, as John mentioned earlier, with internal users, partners, we think about donors, volunteers, staff, employees, grantees, and even members in the case of membership-based organizations. They're looking for transparent, result-oriented, and efficient ways of looking at a single pane of glass, a single entry point for all analytics and search needs. There's so much out there, like research papers, studies, and things of that nature. So the identity and access management piece in our solution architecture is based off a federated implementation that allows easy onboarding and offboarding for both internal and external users to get access to the different communities. Now, there's different choices you can make. We have Okta, Ping, Azure Active Directory, which all provide single sign-on capabilities and also multi-factor authentication capabilities to make sure that our solution is secure. We leveraged Azure Search because of its cognitive and AI capabilities as the knowledge repository itself for the documentation or the unstructured data piece of things, and used knowledge. We're experimenting with knowledge mining and auto tagging to improve the faceted search results. Now, the other aspects, like the web application tier, SQL database, we used platform services for that as well within Azure, which allows us to, again, be flexible and integrate very well with things like Power BI with embedded dashboards for the second piece of our solution, which is really the analytics or the structured data view. Again, a single pane of glass to be able to do that. Now, from a for integration and future integration needs, we have also implemented the concept of connectors, especially with business application integration with ServiceNow, Salesforce, OneDrive for Business, Teams, Slack. Those things are on our roadmap. We've already implemented integration with Box and Dynamic CRM. Now, looking at a slightly different piece, which is the human-centered design aspect or the user design side of things. What we did, as John mentioned earlier, we wanted to do an incremental, take an agile approach to building this. We didn't want to kind of sift through all requirements and kind of user stories and start building something. So what we did was we did some user sessions, looked at the data sources and the data types that were in there. What we quickly realized is that there's both structured and unstructured data sets that need to be brought together and not kept in a siloed application. So the search and the dashboard experience had to gel well together and play hand in hand. So whether a user was coming in there to kind of search for artifacts and look for documents that they can share and download and quickly reference, or any research material, or they were going to come in and see how certain impacts were being made to the community itself in an analytics dashboard using Power BI. So this was not going to be yet another siloed system. As John was saying, this has to be an enterprise-ready data warehouse solution. For that, what we did is the second level of thinking was with getting regular feedback through demos and prototyping our releases, so that we understand the activities and the behaviors with what has been put in production already. And then we would also make sure that we had captured different wish list items from different groups and departments, because this was not only built for the internal consumption or something that we were replacing an existing repository with. The focus here was to make sure we build something that's ready for external facing communities, and that's why we kind of did all of this in a multi-tenant fashion, where we were trying to bring in multiple communities into the same cohesive platform so that we don't end up having that disjointed experience. And one of the key things with Azure Search that we've been able to benefit from is we've created multiple indexes, within our data sets that we've captured. That's allowed us to have community-based security. And if somebody doesn't want to share something outside of a community, it doesn't get to the hands of others. We had some very interesting challenges there. And similarly with the dashboarding analytics piece, there's also a security aspect to things there as well. And just to wrap things up, there's a couple of screenshots we wanted to share with you. We wanted to keep it very simple, as you can see, elegant design, Bing-like search, and make sure that, we have the users are able to self-service and use the system, and, get to the refiners easily and then sort things and in a faceted filter fashion based on the results. They could download or share those results with others as they needed via email. So as you can see, we kept a very simple, easy to use UI, and the experience would vary based on the community that you are a part of. So your results, as I was saying earlier, would be secured in a way that you can only see stuff that you have access to. So the identity access management solution, Azure Search, all those cognitive AI kind of features played right in for creating this great framework. Back to you, John. Oh, Matt.
So as Yogesh shared with you, we initially started out with that landing page, and it had integrated Power BI, which was the embedded license. It had the Bing-like search of the different repositories, but we found that our communities wanted to have their own tailored experience. So as you look at the slide, what we were able to do, as an example, is we could establish different public landing pages, and you can see here volunteer member portal, which allows you to tailor the experience. You could have it as just one, like we showed you initially, but if you need it to segregate out, you have that ability. If you needed public content, you could surface it there to entice people, or maybe you have some public content that you do want to share. And then what we did is we had our identity solution and had everybody authenticate. And once they were authenticated, they would come to their dedicated landing page. Same technology, we're just able to tailor it to meet the needs of that portal. And then depending what other solutions via connectors that they need to be a part of, we're able to tailor that experience. So if you look in this one, the volunteers could have an independent community on a community platform. Let's say it's Jive, it could be Slack, it could be anyone that's out there. And then they only see their community, but from the back end, it's all the same, and it's just managed so they can have their own separate experience. And the same thing with the data warehouse, whether you went into what Yogesh showed you, or you come here, the only thing they can see here is they're authorized to see their community. So the volunteers come in, they see the volunteer repository, they can download, they can share favorites. The options we've built out are pretty robust. We've added administrative functionality in there as well, which we won't have time to go through. But this has gone to a whole nother level, allowing us to mix and match solutions in a way that's going to be effective for any given one of these sets of constituents. So I think it would turn out to be a really, really effective, secure process. And I think of options for, let's say it was Net Hope and they're doing disaster relief. If there was a disaster relief portal here, all the members could share and connect these tools securely. If they had volunteers, they could have volunteers. And you could have that in different scenarios for public and private companies as well. But I think the architecture now is extremely flexible to allow that to happen. And then if we shift to the implementation support model, as you look at what you'd like to do, you need to figure out internally, how do you tie to your strategic plan of your organization? Do you have internal resources of what kind? And then where do you need help if you were going to implement something similar? In my case, we had a number of technical resources. Some organizations don't have IT teams, or they have large IT teams. some of the business experts are embedded in different parts of the organization or they're structured differently. So figure out who you need and who you can tap within your organization, and then partner with the delivery organization and leverage the resources they have. Now, in our case, I liked the ability to have, if I wanted somebody on site, if I wanted folks local, or leveraging a global delivery, I appreciated that because it extended my day and it allowed things to get done at night while we were sleeping. And if I was still a global organization, when you have staff in South Sudan or Congo or Thailand, or you're working on a project, it's nice to be able to reach out for support or assistance to a global delivery team versus waiting for the U.S. to wake up. So I think it's important to look at organizations and look at how to best leverage the resources they have and what your needs are, not just locally, but whether it's across the U.S. or across the globe. What do you need augmentation with, technical, business analysis, or otherwise, to really have and build out an effective solution that works for your organization? In our case, we started with as we said, a pilot project, and it worked for us, proof of concept, and then we continued on with the global delivery team in this manner. And so I think you just have to take a look and see what's going to work. But as we go to like the value realized, at least for what I've seen, as we built out this solution, we went from challenge process, manual processes, different data streams, and we brought that together to allow staff and leadership to have access to data and to analytics. If I look at the dashboards now, where maybe that was cobbled together somehow, now it can be updated every single day based on the availability of data. You can set your dashboards depending on what your data streams are. But I've always to think of travel, for example. If you do a lot of travel, a lot of events, and you need to see what that spend is versus budgets, that's very easily to integrate a CRM and a finance system to pull into the data warehouse and then to pull into your Power BI. It's powerful, and executives can take a look at that and quickly make decisions. The solution we built is secure, very scalable, as you saw, very flexible depending on what you want to connect and how you want to share it internally and externally, and tailoring it without having to build one-off solutions. It's all configurable, which was powerful for us, so we could tailor out for every community something slightly different, still being on the same platform and being able to quickly meet their needs. And then through this process, we've been focused on continuous improvement, especially with customer feedback internally and externally. We wouldn't have been as successful without that user-driven input, because it's not really for the technology team to drive this. It's really based on what those communities need and want, and what's going to allow them to focus on their mission and successfully move their mission forward. And so I think we should shift to about CEI.
Great, thanks, John, and thanks first and foremost for what's really been a remarkable partnership between Annie, Casey, and CEI. We really appreciate the leadership and the sponsorship that you've thrown throughout the engagement, and thank you and Yogesh for walking us through both conceptually and practically Annie Casey's journey towards implementing what really is a dynamic but still secure, scalable, reliable, easy to use portal experience. And we're glad to obviously have you on and sharing the story with the attendees. The folks on the call, thank you for the time this afternoon. This is Matt Whitfield. I'm Director of Sales for CEI here in the Mid-Atlantic region. As you can see there on the left, CEI has several US-based locations, as well as global delivery centers offshore in Chennai, India, nearshore, as well as in Barcelona, Spain, and then nearshore in Lima, Peru. But the good news is with those US locations here in DC, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and some of the other geographies that are represented there, We are available, as John mentioned, to be able to deliver both on-site, near shore, and onshore. Our model essentially scales to your needs. That is one differentiator, and you can see some other differentiators there on the right. But really, the core of what I wanted to talk to were some of the selected service offerings that we just talked through, that Yogesh and John had to describe and related relative to Annie and Casey. The first is our data strategy services. This is really where we help ensure a client's organizational mission and data aspirations are in harmony. What we do is we identify meaningful business outcomes, and we prioritize them, and then ultimately determine what the parameters are of that foundational data warehouse, and build what is a tailored roadmap for adoption and solution realization. And the key word there obviously is tailored. We want to make sure that the learnings that we have from past experience are applied, but not necessarily, but are tailored and adapted to fit your specific need and your organization's goals and the parameters that we've identified and worked with you to prioritize. The second piece is the cloud migration analytics and business intelligence services. That's essentially what John and Yogesh have been talking about today, and that you've had a chance to get some insight into. Really, it reflects our philosophical approach to data, which is to not only provide better insights into your data, but also along with you get you to the point where you can have predictive analytics and allow you to do more with less, or even better, to be better with less. That philosophy really extends into what we coined sort of the crown jewel of data, which is around machine learning and artificial intelligence. How can we help you expose new opportunities? How can we help you drive innovation by looking at the data that you have today and that you'll have tomorrow in a different way? The third piece in the lower right is that integrated global delivery, development, and support model. CEI does leverage distributed delivery, as I mentioned, in the US, as well as nearshore, offshore. The advantage to that is the obvious one: labor arbitrage where possible, driving costs out of the model. But it's not the only reason to leverage global delivery. As John pointed out, the flexibility that having two teams working in two different regions that essentially extended the workday and allowed for components of work to be delivered offshore and then brought onshore for further validation and implementation, really took what could be an 8 to 10 hour workday and extended it into 16 to 20 hours. And that's a real, very large motivator for a large number of clients. And then ultimately, human-centered design. This is a core practice for CEI. We have teams of human-centered design specialists that have grown up in the user experience world, and their whole focus is to help provide specific and unique details of what your solution is going to provide and how your users, whether they're internal or whether they're members or constituents, how are they going to engage with the application? Is it meeting their needs, and is it doing so efficiently and effectively? Ultimately, it's about driving adoption, and how can our HCD SMEs be able to work with our architects and our data analysts to provide an experience to those users that is going to be meaningful, that will be repeatable. So how can CEI help? Listen, I know not everybody on this call comes from the 501c3 or association world, but I know everybody on this call, and CEI is not immune to this. We're all facing challenges. We're facing challenges that I don't know that any of us ever really envisioned. Nonprofits are certainly impacted greatly. Revenues associated with your fundraising have been canceled. Fee-for-service revenue has been greatly impacted. Grant funding and individual donations are reduced. There's no doubt about that. We recognize that, but we also recognize that all organizations need to deal with that situation, as well as begin to prepare, spend some time preparing for the future and figuring out how are you and your organization going to transform to evolve, to be able to look and act and be different on the other end of COVID-19. So that's where it comes to our offer. You've heard a lot about our Analytics Solutions Accelerator. We are offering this with any solutions development engagement that anyone on this call decides to move forward with. We will implement the Analytics Solutions Accelerator at no fee to you as part of that development engagement. We've seen in the past where that can result in anywhere from 30 to 50% cost and time savings to all organizations. But we also recognize that for your team to be engaged and implemented into the solution itself, this sort of the adoption that would come with having combined teams, they need time freed up from their day-to-day activities. And so what we're also offering in parallel with that is the 60-day application maintenance and support service engagement, at least 60 days at no cost to you. The intent there is to be able to try to free up some time that your internal resources are engaged in today to be able to allow them to focus on what we would imagine is a more critical, more value-driven engagement, like a solutions development initiative that we've discussed today, so that we can take that on, do it at no cost to you for at least 60 days, and hopefully have the opportunity then to engage and deliver the solution development engagement that is meaningful and powerful for your association or your organization. If you are interested in talking to us more about what that would look like within your particular instance, please reach out to me. My contact information is there, or you can certainly feel free to respond to any of the webinar information that you've received via email, and somebody on the CEI sales team will follow up with you. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Norma.
Great, thank you, Matt. Thank you to all our participants. So at this time, we're going to move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. We thank everyone who submitted some questions in advance when you registered. Hope we answered at least some of those in the presentation. As a reminder, you can ask a question via the question box in your dashboard or the chat feature, either way. So while you guys can think of some questions, we're going to go ahead and address some of the ones that were submitted prior to the webinar. So the first question is, and hope we've answered this somewhat, but do you have recommendations for owning and managing your data that sits across various platforms? I'll throw that one to either John or Yogesh, whoever wants to take it.
Yogesh, either way.
Yeah, John, you already touched upon this earlier. I'm going to just piggyback off that and say that there is admin and moderator functionality that is built in, and we partner with the business community, and help them build communities of interest that they want to manage and sustain on their own. So our moderator role is key to the success of bringing in those disjointed, disparate sources, bringing and making those connectors more flexible so that we can bring in more data, but then also the management of existing data. We don't want to be just another repository with stale content in there. So we have, considered all the choices, and ownership from the business viewpoint is key, and community managing their own content will be a key to success. And that's the reason why we kept the UI so simple that they can manage it on their own.
Yeah, I think too, Yogesh, what we did was we allowed for third-party moderators as well, which was really good because not everybody internally has the time. So if you've got a partner that's running your community, the permissions are such that that can happen as well, and they may have an active team that helps you curate and enhance that overall experience with the data.
Great, thank you guys. Next question, can you speak specifically about the use of Elasticsearch and integration into Azure?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. So the way we kind of did some due diligence early on in the project, we did a proof of concept phase, and we were looking at choices for the search engine we wanted to use, in the platform. So we settled with Azure Search, but if the question is how Elasticsearch works, it's a pretty similar thing. But because of the platform service within Azure, with the ability, the cognitive services abilities that we could tap into quickly for, solutions like key phrase extractions, image extractions, because those were some key things we wanted to do, and facet filters, and also search indexing. We settled with Azure Search. But Elasticsearch can also be plugged into our solution the way we kind of did that, the web API tier. So if you go back to the solution architecture diagram, you can see the way we did that web API tier. It's flexible and can work with any other search engine as well.
Okay, thank you, Yogesh.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, or sorry, did you have something else to add?
No,
okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Next question, do you have any advice for selecting a partner if you're using global delivery? Are there risks for that? How do you overcome those?
I've got a lot of experience, many decades now of experience. I think it's important to speak to your peers and speak to the vendors about their preferred partners. It's kind of the journey we started, and we looked at more than 5, and then we try to get down to 3 to 5 recommended solutions. We looked at not only Microsoft partners initially, but others, but we ended up whittling down to a Microsoft-centric solution in this case, and looked at the capabilities, the skill sets, the references, and then we went with the pilot project versus going all in, which I thought went extremely well. And we took, in this case, had selected CEI and worked and partnered with local folks and then with the global delivery team. And then I took the opportunity to go to the headquarters, and I went, and not everybody's going to do this, but I went to Chennai and spent time with the team in Chennai as well, based on my background where I used to do a lot of global delivery. And so I found everybody extremely capable. The teams worked well together. The resources across the areas, they didn't have to be with each other, but it was important to understand the dynamics and the skill sets and the collaboration, and it worked out very well, and we've been successful. And I have really good dialogue and partnership with everybody in the different locations. So I think some subset, everybody's not going to go to that extreme, but you've got to do your homework, and you've got to be methodical about the process to make sure you're setting yourself and your organization up for success.
Great, thank you, John. Well, I think we've run out of questions. If nobody else has any other questions, we'll just go ahead and wrap it up and give you guys a little bit of extra time back. First of all, thank you so much to our presenters and the content that they prepared and worked. We hope that everyone found the content valuable. After this, we will be sending you a link to the recording that you can use to review or share with others in your organization who might be interested or benefit. We hope that you're all staying well in this unprecedented time. And then again, if you need help or you're interested in taking advantage of our offers or engaging with us, please reach out to Matt or to your CI account executive that you have a relationship with. Hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you, everyone. And that's the end of our broadcast.